like to go ahead and call the Monday, January 28th Mayor and Council meeting to order. And I would like to ask Winfrey Sullivan to lead us in the pledge. Thank you so much, Winfrey. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Tizer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Grower. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the proclamation for Black History Month. Whereas the celebration of Black History Month was begun by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the son of former slaves, and whereas Black History Month has been celebrated nationally in America since 1926, and whereas February was designated Black History Month in recognition of Black achievements that greatly impacted American history, and whereas the Historic and Cultural Affairs Division of the City of Roswell Recreation and Parks Historic and Cultural Affairs Department, working with a volunteer steering committee, will host the Roswell Roots Festival of Black History and Culture for the 18th year, and whereas the Groveway Community Group, Southern Trilogy Homes, Visit Roswell Convention and Visitors Bureau, Roswell Cultural Arts Center, Atlanta Fulton County Public Library System, Roswell Presbyterian Church, Red Door Playhouse, Soul Food Cipher, Roswell Historical Society, and the Kings and Queens chapter of the American Bridge Association are also participating. And whereas the 2019 Roswell Roots Festival includes 5 exhibits and 15 events focused on art, storytelling, music, education, literature, food, games, and more. And whereas the Roswell Roots Festival celebrates the contributions of Roswell's African American citizens, both past and present, now therefore I, Lori Henry, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim all of February 2019 as Black History Month and call upon all of our citizens to recognize the special celebration of African American heritage and culture through participation in all of the events of the Roswell Roots Festival. Do I have anyone that can come forward and tell me a little bit about the festival and what events we have coming up? Please come forward, because after you tell us all about it, we'll take a picture together, and we'd love to have everyone in the picture.
Thank you, Mayor Henry and council members, for your commitment to help us celebrate Black History Month. Roswell Roots has been around over 10 years and still going strong. We have a lot of events going on this for February. We actually kicked it off yesterday at the Presbyterian Church with the Jazz Vespers with Dr. Dwight Andrews, Professor of Music Theory and African American Music at Emory University, and Senior Minister of the First Congregational United Church of Christ. And if you weren't there, you missed a treat. So if they come back next year, you need to be there, because it was a place to be, because it was a swinging Presbyterian church yesterday. And come out next Sunday to Groveway Got Talent. We had our auditions, and we're giving away $500 first prize. So if you haven't gotten your tickets, you can see me. I have plenty. And if you buy an adult ticket, you get a child under 12 in free. That's not on the brochure, but we made a few adjustments just to try to get our kids involved. So we have some awesome talent that'll be going on next Sunday at 2:30. Even though Super Bowl is going on, you got time to put it in slow cooker, come over to Cultural Arts Center and get started. And we have the Bid Whiz Card Party with American Bridge Association Kings and Queens chapter. We have the annual Roswell Roots Arts Festival and art exhibit at City Hall, featuring student artwork from Hembry Springs Elementary and local artists and history exhibit at the Cultural Arts Center. We also have interactive programs at the Roswell Historic Homes, and also a book signing at NB All-Star Joe Barry Carroll. And also, we'll be telling our story at Pleasant Hill Baptist Church, which is the oldest black church in Roswell, on the third Sunday. We'll be telling our story, and we are looking for black businesses to be able to tell their story, how they made it in Roswell over the years. And my counterpart will finish.
Okay. So again, thank you, Mayor and Council, for your support over the years. We do have a full agenda, and there's a calendar and a brochure that will be distributed, that has been distributed to you and will be out for others in a bit. But we have lots of events, including a college fair, which will have 40 vendors and colleges and students to come and take part in. I think it's the third year we've done the college fair, and it's been very, very successful. It's growing every year. We also have Soul Food Cipher, which is a program of storytelling and based on hip hop and culture, where they teach kids about history and how to better articulate and talk, and there's some play acting and all that sort of thing, so a very fun time, leadership skills and that sort of thing. Then there's the Ranky Tanky concert, which will be at the Cultural Arts Center, which is a huge event because this group has been listed as #1 on the Billboard chart in jazz and on Apple Music. Yeah, so it's really good. There's a lot of events going on. If you can go out to any, we'd love for you to be there. Again, as Gail said, last night was a great night. Last year we had pretty good participation from the council, so hopefully next year we'll have even better. I do want to say one thing. So Roswell has been doing this event for 20 years. This is the largest Black History Month celebration of any municipality in the Southeast. We've won awards for it. It's a major deal. It's something that we, the black community in Roswell, take a lot of pride in, and we're glad that you guys take pride in it. And we know you're going to continue to invest in it and make it bigger and better as the years go by. So thank you.
And we would love to get a picture with you all if you'll stay up here, please.
Okay.
Thank you again. This is a great festival, and I look forward to it every year. There's some great programs and fun things to do. The next item on the agenda is the approval of Planning Commission appointment, Allison Archibald. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Grower. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. And I would like to welcome Allison Archibald to our boards and commissions. And I would once again like to say that we truly do appreciate all of you that are willing to volunteer your time to the City of Roswell. Next on the agenda is Administration and Finance Department. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 3 of the agenda, approval to select an organization to receive the surplus funds generated from Alive in Roswell 2019. It's going to be presented by Chris Ward, Special Event Manager.
Good evening. As you know, Gate City Brewing and Carl Black GMC Alive in Roswell 2018 ended in October, and we had a great year. We had a year-end surplus of $8,000, and we are requesting Mayor and Council to approve the use of these surplus funds to an organization of their choice. And I sent, I think, Councilmember Tizer had asked for a list of projects, which I sent to everyone's email. Staff recommends the Roswell Trolley to give back. We feel that they have supplied free service on Friday and Saturday night, not only to residents, but other members of the community. And we're hoping to use them for our Alive in Roswell 7 series this fall, this 2019 season as well.
Thank you. Does Council have any questions? Seeing no hands up, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
Just a quick question. I'm Janet Russell. Fine with the $8,000, but this agenda item says an organization. Is the trolley an organization? I thought it was sponsored by Carl Black, which is a business. I honestly don't know.
It's a nonprofit.
It is a nonprofit organization, because that's important. We can't just give money to a business because they support us. We appreciate it as a community, but you just can't say, hey, you got extra money, we're going to give it to you. So they are a 501c3?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clear for the people at home watching on TV. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak? Seeing no one come forward, any additional comments, questions from council? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Nope, go ahead.
Thank you. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Zapata. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tizer. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Back to you, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So item number 4 of today's agenda, approval to establish a special event fund and approval of a budget amendment BA 29161701012819 in the amount of $47,276 for Alive in Roswell and Music on the Hill for year 2019. Presented by Chris Ward, Special Event Manager.
Thank you. As you are aware, Atlanta Plays It Forward will no longer be the manager for Alive in Roswell or Music on the Hill, and now the city will take full responsibility for managing both these events, which does include the collection of sponsorship dollars and revenues and paying out expenses to our vendors, porta potties, bands, stages. We are recommending establishing a special events fund to account for the revenues and expenses associated with these events. Additionally, a budget amendment is requested by us as well to establish a budget for these city events for FY 2019. The budgets are necessary to enable us to receive revenues from our sponsorship dollars and again to pay out the vendors and expenses. The budget for future fiscal years will be incorporated into our annual budget for 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Thank you. So, Ms. Ward, I guess my question is, I think it's a great event, and I definitely appreciate all you're doing and the city's doing, as well as our many great partners. My question is, keeping in mind that I see Alive in Roswell as a it's been a very successful event, really having Roswell as a destination and also helping be an economic driver for a number of our businesses downtown. There was discussion from some businesses and interest in having Alive in Roswell go not just till October, but going till November. And I'm curious to kind of hear your thoughts on that and how that could potentially be incorporated. I was initially just going to request that be another discussion for a committee meeting, but then realizing if we're setting a budget, if that affects it and what sponsors pay, et cetera.
Right, so this budget amendment is just for 2019, so it'll just be April, May, June, and then we'll work on the 2020 budget. So that would incorporate the November. And I did speak with the Bramblett family. They were very interested in having it in November. They came in, we sat down with them, and we showed them what a month of costs would be to run an additional month, and they were a little bit astonished that it's that much, but it's 12 officers, it's 4 or 5 transportation, it's recreation and parks, road closures and all that. And at that point, they went back, talked to some of the other restaurants, and didn't feel like at that point they really wanted to invest in that. And at this point, we didn't have the budget to do it. They were talking about it to us in September and October. But certainly going forward, we could look at increasing the months that we do it. Absolutely.
Excellent, because I will be voting in support of this budget amendment, but I definitely do want to make sure that we are discussing this year the potential, and obviously I'd want to check in with businesses, residents, et cetera, but I think that's something we should absolutely consider for this year.
And I think also with the special events committee that we're forming right now, that could also be a great topic of, do you want it to go on for longer or, shorter period? What was the view of the special events committee? So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Yes, Councilmember Tizer.
Yeah, just to clarify, this is a request to spend $47,276. There's an equal amount of revenue that's expected, and that's why you're setting up the special fund, is for that revenue to come in, and we're approving your ability to bring in that revenue.
Yes, sir.
So this isn't just an expense of $47,000. That's the point I wanted to make.
No, sir. It's just for the 3 months, April, May, June. Thank you.
Additional questions from council? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
Now I am confused. This $47,276 is only for 3 months? So almost $16,000 a month to put this event on? $16,000.
Ms. Russell, if you'd ask all your questions for mayor and council, and then I'll have them answer.
Okay, because they didn't know the answers either. That's why Mr. Tizer just asked a question. $47,276 is for only 3 months, and we're expecting to get $47,276 equal? So you're telling me that it takes $94,000, $30,000 per event for 3 months, times 3 months? That seems like a lot, $30,000 per event. Just questioning it. I know it's a driver of all those things Mr. Palermo mentioned, but just needed to be real clear, because it's not real clear to the average. We haven't been at your work sessions. We don't know what went on in the meeting before the meeting. So I just want to make sure that 47,000 times 2 is 94,000 divided by 3 is $31,000 per month for the first 3 months of the event. Is that correct?
And we will clarify that for you. Thank you. Yes.
So if I'm understanding what you're asking, the total for Alive in Roswell, as far as revenues, is about $139,500 estimated. And for the expenses total, just for April through October, would be about that. We're about a wash. We're about $120,000. That's why we sometimes have a surplus of $8,000 or $10,000. So we are just showing you April through June of 2019. And yes, the total for not just Alive in Roswell is $39,576, and the expenses for Music on the Hill is $7,700. So yeah, it's about $10,000 a month.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Mm-hmm. Anyone in the public have any comments, questions? I'll bring it back to council. Any further discussion from council? Do I have a motion?
Yes, motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Zapata. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Palermo. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll move to finance now. Item number 5, approval of a resolution requesting an increase to the City of Roswell Hotel Motel excise tax rate, presented by Mr. Ryan Lockett, Finance Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you might remember, at our last committee meeting, we brought forward the idea of increasing our hotel motel tax rate, and that was recommended to come before the council. As you know, the city currently levies about a 6% excise tax on hotel accommodations, which brings in about $1.1 million a year. State law does allow us to increase that rate up to 8%. And we are recommending that based on looking at our surrounding jurisdictions and the rate they currently charge. The additional funds that could come in could also go to help enhance tourism efforts as well as lessen the reliance on property tax. Based upon our current existing hotels in the city of Roswell, we estimate that we would bring in an additional $350,000 annually. When you factor in our the planned hotels, that could increase to about $1.4 million on an annual basis. By increasing the tax rate to 8%, it does change the percentage breakdown as to the uses for those funds. That would include 37.5% or 3 of the 8 pennies going to the general fund, 43.75% or 3.5 of the pennies going to support tourism at the CVB, as well as 1.5 pennies or 18.75% dedicated for tourism product development. That was one of the questions that came up at our last committee meeting in terms of some direction that we needed to specify in the resolution as to the uses that we would use this tourism product development money for. As you can see in the resolution that's included in your packet, based on conversations with staff, we are recommending the following uses. This is found in section 2 under it is further resolved. It says that these funds shall be expended for tourism product development, specifically wayfinding signage, museums, parks, trails, and other recreational facilities. As I mentioned at the committee meeting, that would be, this can always be changed in the future. Once it gets approved, all it would take would be an ordinance change by the council in order to change those purposes should the council desire to. The resolution before you tonight is to initiate the process. Once you pass the resolution, that would be sent to our state legislative delegation, and it would require a local act by the General Assembly. Once that is completed, if it is completed, then it would come back to the council for an adoption of an updated ordinance, and the rate would then go into effect after that. So I'm available for any questions you might have.
Does council have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Grower.
One question I have is, I don't see specifically that we mentioned a visitor center as one of the usages of that. Would it make sense to call that out specifically if we think eventually it might be used for that?
If it was something in the short term that we might want to use it for, then I would say we would want to include it in the resolution, yes.
All right, so I'd like to add that part.
Additional questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Wilsey.
Just a couple of quick questions related to the same topic about the tourism development. There were certain things that you said were excluded, that had to be excluded, such as like maintenance of properties. Is that correct?
Right. So on the tourism product development, state law specifies that it must be for the creation or expansion of the facility or the project or whatever it is. It can be used for operating or capital expense, but it must be an expansion or a creation. So it has to be something new beyond what we have today.
Okay, but it could be used like as creative or expansion of programs at, say, a museum or something like that. So
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
just like expansion or development of a program at a museum or that we have currently.
Right,
So,
as long as it, yes.
and at what time are those funds directed? Is that once the resolution comes back and then council will decide where to direct the funds, is that correct?
Right. It would be a part of our annual budget process.
Okay.
So we would have these uses as allowable uses by our ordinance, and then it would be decided by the council through the annual budget process.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Additional questions from council? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Don Horton, 9885 Robinwood Lane in Roswell. I don't know if this has been under consideration yet, but there's an increasing number of Airbnb and VRBOs coming across our community, some having a negative impact on neighborhoods. And I'm wondering if we could consider adding the tax, adding those two organizations or similar organizations to the ordinance so that they're also paying the tax.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. It is my understanding that there's some state legislation that's going on regarding Airbnbs. And Mr. Davidson, could you refresh my memory on the tax that we're collecting now?
So currently we are involved in a class action lawsuit with several other cities in the state of Georgia. We've been in contact with Airbnb and are in discussions about collecting the taxes through them. The state legislation will probably have some effect on what we're able to do. From my understanding, I haven't seen this year's proposal, but it's been the last 2 years it's been proposed. So when it comes out, I'll be happy to share it with you.
And Mr. Davidson, do they pay the same rate that the hotels?
Yes.
Thank you. I think that answers your question. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am, please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. This is something that I had brought up before, and Mr. Luckett and I have been in long discussions about. Previously, hotel taxes, you know, that's my business. That's what I do for a living. I book hotels. When you book a hotel online, whether it's directly through a hotel's website or through a secondary source like Expedia or me as a travel agent, and I booked a hotel, the sales tax that was charged and collected went to the state, not to the city within which it resides. That was law. I brought this up many, many times, and if a hotel is booked directly, you pick up the phone and you call the DoubleTree in Roswell, then that tax stays in the city. So some people or other cities saw the inequity in that, and I believe we got into a class action suit with that. Mr. Luckett and I talked about it. The problem was we lost much, much money because we never audited after that class action suit was settled and collected the money. And there was no reporting system for it in Roswell. None. So whether it's 1% or 8%, if you don't collect it, you don't have it. So my concern is we're going to up our excise sales tax, but we need to make sure we collect it. And we need to, I have been urging that we have a back audit for 10 years to these hotels, and they all have it, to collect the lost income from that, which knew that if you booked online, we didn't get the tax. I was the one that brought it up at a work session in room 220 a long time ago. I think it's really important that people understand the sales tax issue here. The VRBO thing, some pay taxes, some don't, you know, it's kind of loosey-goosey right now. Cities are revolting against it. I personally don't like Airbnbs because they contribute nothing to the economy. They don't hire people, they don't employ people, they don't do anything. They don't bring jobs, which is why I'm in the business for 40 years. So I would urge, if we increase this excise sales tax, that we make sure that we have an accurate quarterly, and Mr. Luckett's the best, he's been great to help me, but it has to be enforced or we're just blowing smoke. We're not going to collect it, and in fact, it might just go to the state, and they will love us for that. So we need to examine the other cities around us, like Sandy Springs and Alpharetta, that have larger hotels, and find out exactly how they are accounting and collecting that revenue. It's very important. I agree with Mr. Grower regarding the visitor center. We need to improve our visitor center, and this is a primary way to do it. The visitor center we currently have is pitiful. It is pitiful. And we have a vibrant historic district. No one comes here to go to Home Depot. They come here to see our historical district and what we offer as a place to visit or live. And the visitor center is pitiful. We need to move it, and we need to improve it. I remember recommending that we buy the funeral home during the recession when it was a restaurant. It was $1 million. It would have been the best money we ever spent because it was on the corner of the historic square with plenty of parking even for tour buses. And I was told the city didn't want to get into real estate business. It was too late. We already own 30 parks. So I just urge you with this tax money to make sure we actually collect it, because it's there for us. And we need to find, whether it's quarterly or monthly, we need to find a way to collect it and audit what they're actually selling. Because we won the lawsuit about the money not going to the state if it's booked online, but nobody knew that here until I brought it up about a year ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. We'll certainly follow up on that. Is there anyone else that'd like to come forward? Yes, sir.
We did overhead. Lee Fleck, 435 North Pond Trail. Since you're just starting your 2020 budget process, I would like to recommend where a portion of the anticipated revenues need to go that are allocated for the general fund. Now, I hope what I'm about to say stimulates out-of-the-box thought process from all of you. I'm sorry, but simply filling the recent absentees in the chief and assistant chief police positions, along with the associated current shakeup in staff that's happened recently, is futile without providing the new management staff the tools to do their jobs. Nothing is going to change without an increase in the complement of officers.
Excuse me, Mr. Fleck, would you stick to the topic, please, which is hotel motel tax?
I'm talking about the expenditure of the $350,000 that is projected. I think it's fair to say other people have talked about the expenditures. Please, allow me to finish. It takes approximately 2 years for a police officer to be effective on the street in Roswell. Every new police officer, after he graduates, is required to spend 2 years in his affiliated police public safety department that he paid for his graduation. After that, he becomes a free agent. That means he can go anywhere. He is fully qualified to hit the streets immediately. I want to recommend that this council seriously consider a signing bonus to attract police officers. You can also put a banner up over 37 over there saying under new management if you want. I'm suggesting a sign-up bonus of $5,000 to $10,000 for new officers. And you say, oh my God, where's that money coming from? Well, that's what I'm saying. You got $350,000. A portion of that goes to the general fund. You also just the interest alone from the $11 million you have in excess unallocated reserves will more than cover that projected expense. You have serious shortages, much greater shortages than your chief told you about. General comments I'm hearing is it's over 20 officers. I hope you would consider that when you do your budget this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak? Seeing no one come forward, additional comments, questions from council? Councilmember Zapata, do we have a motion?
Yes, Mayor. So we're going to add on the resolution on a point number 2, adding visitor center as well. So with this addition, I would like to make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Zapata. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Grower. All those in favor, please raise your hands, and it passes unanimously. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving to item number 6 of today's agenda, presentation of the fiscal year 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, presented by Mr. Ryan Lockett, Finance Director.
The next item we have for you this evening, as Councilmember Zapata stated, is the presentation of our fiscal year 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. As you may or may not know, state law does require that the city undergo an audit every year of our financials, but the city actually goes above and beyond that as we prepare a comprehensive annual financial report. It includes other components that really help to ensure that we are being as transparent as possible with our finances for our residents. And we've done that now for over 30 years. I'm also proud to show you, and you have one at your desk, this is the first year that we've completed a popular annual financial report. This is sort of like a Reader's Digest version of the comprehensive annual financial report. And it's a little bit easier to read, has some more graphics, and just as a way to kind of narrow down and cover the big picture out of our city financials. So this is the first year that we've completed that. There are about 15 cities or counties or organizations in Georgia that currently produce a popular annual financial report. So we'll be making this available on our city website so it can be seen by all of our residents. I did want to introduce Adam Fraley, who is a partner with Malden and Jenkins. He is going to be coming up to talk a little bit about our the results of our annual audit. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Adam Fraley with the auditing firm Malden and Jenkins. I'm here tonight to present the annual audit for the City of Roswell for the year ended June 30th, 2018. On the screen up here and in your packets, you have what we call our auditor's discussion and analysis. It's a summary, really, of the audit results, some of the highlights of the numbers, as well as any items that we identified as part of our audit. I'm going to stick to that and go through that and hit some of the highlights that it's got in there for you this evening. So if you want to follow along with me. Do I go? All right, so I'm going to start on page 2 here. This is a little information about our firm. We are a full-service CPA firm. We specialize in audit. Also, our tax practice. Within our audit practice, we specialize in state and local government auditing. It makes up over 25% of our firm, and you can see there hundreds of governments that we serve, mostly in the state of Georgia. And myself, I was the engagement lead partner as part of the audit. The next page is some of the other industries that we serve, also some of the other services that we provide. And then on page 4, as Mr. Luckett mentioned, the city is required annually to prepare a annual financial report, submit that to the state of Georgia in accordance with state law. Our responsibility is to audit the financial statements to make sure they're materially correct. The financial statements are the responsibility of the city's finance department, and based on our auditing, we issued what we call a clean opinion oftentimes, which is an unmodified audit report. What that means is we believe, based on our test work, that these financial statements are materially correct. Mr. Luckett stole a little of my thunder, but one of the things I like to do is pat the city on the back related to the preparation of a comprehensive annual financial report. He mentioned that only about 15 communities, governments within the state of Georgia prepare a popular annual financial report. Well, the majority of governments in Georgia don't also prepare a comprehensive annual financial report. So that really is going above and beyond what state law requires, and and a lot of good information. So as you're looking at the CAFR, you can see there it's got an introductory section, which is particular to a CAFR, as well as the stats section that goes about 10 years back on the city's history, financial and non-financial statistics there. So that's a lot of good information. One other thing, as you're looking at the CAFR that I don't mention there, but is the management's discussion analysis. So I'd encourage you to look at that as you're looking at the financial statements. It kind of gives a synopsis of kind of what's behind the numbers and what happened during the year that drove some of the changes in the financials of the city. Now just a quick little overview of the finances related to the city. Of course, the city, when we refer to the government-wide financial statements, that's the city's financial statements kind of as a whole, everything lumped together on a full accrual basis, all your receivables, payables, all that good stuff. Then there is also the fund financial statements on a different basis of accounting, and those are all your different funds, your general fund obviously being your main operating fund and all your special revenue funds. So keep that in mind as I go through. And then on the next page here, obviously the general fund is your main operating fund. You'll see here that the general fund had revenues of about $72 million. These numbers are in millions, compared to last year of about $69.5 million. And you'll see a trend there of the taxes, which are the largest revenue source for the general fund. And you can see the different taxes over a 5-year period there and how they've behaved. On the next page, you'll see the breakdown of the revenues, and you'll also see the breakdown of the general fund expenditures in the two graphs there. The general fund expenditures were about $62 million this year compared to about $60 million in the prior year. The majority of those expenditures in public safety. On the next page, what we do is compare revenues and expenditures, again, for the general fund. So you'll see there's a 5-year history of how those have behaved and the relationship between the general fund's revenues and expenditures, seeing that the city has been prudent in budgeting and having revenues that cover and exceed its expenditures. And then there's also mention down there about those other governmental funds that I spoke of. So that is the general fund. The city as a whole this year ended its year with a net position, which is kind of the equity position, going from about $225 million to $242 million for its governmental activities, all its governmental funds. And then for its business type activities, it was a slight decrease from about $35 million to $34 million. It is important to note that when you look at net position for the city, a majority of that equity or that net position is obviously made up of infrastructure and other capital assets. In the governmental activities, there's about $28.9 million, and in business type activities, about $11 million that is not in the infrastructure and capital assets or restricted for other purposes, that is actually unrestricted and available for future operations. And then down at the bottom there on page 10 and going over to page 11 as well, this is kind of a Cliff Notes version of the footnotes to the financial statements. So as you and other readers are looking at the statements, you can see kind of what each one of those footnotes are telling the readers there. I'm going to flip over to, starting on page 13, this is our required communications. As auditors, the standards require us to communicate on each one of these elements. I'm not going to read into detail of each one of these, but I always do like to touch on a couple. So on page 14, we didn't have any difficulties encountered in conducting the audit. We didn't have any disagreements with management. They were completely cooperative, getting us information in a timely fashion to complete the audit and make that go effectively and efficiently. So we certainly appreciate that. On the next page, we did have some audit adjustments that were identified through our testing. These were discussed with management. They were posted to the general ledger accounting system. They were also recognized in these financial statements, again, to make sure that they are fairly presented. Going to the next page, you know, this is pretty remarkable. For a city the size of Roswell's size, we only had one finding. The standards these days have kind of really lowered the bar on what has to be a finding, and a lot of times things are having to be reported as a finding that are really accounting in nature, and that's what I put this in the category of. It's kind of a house cleaning, if you will, related to the interfund balances. Obviously, I talked about all these different funds, and they conduct kind of business, if you will, and have transactions in between them, and to settle those up, you know, as we report in the GAAP, or the General Accepted Accounting Principle, annual financial statements. And these were audit adjustments that we proposed to clean up those interfund balances to make sure that they're really realizable. So we did have just one finding, again, which is great. For, you know, again, we audit over 400 governments, and we see findings, and with the standards these days, having to lower that bar. So, so that's a good result there. We did have, starting on page 17 and 18, we did have what we call as management points. These are other management recommendations. Of course, our main task or charge with our audit is to ensure that the financial statements are fairly presented. As a byproduct of that, we obviously notice things that we want to recommend to management that may be able to strengthen internal control processes, et cetera. And these were items that were of a less nature and did not require reporting as a finding, but we thought that we would report those as a assistance to management to help streamline some of those processes. So those are listed there. I'm not going to go into detail on each one of them, but there's 1 through 8 on pages 17 and 18. And then beginning on page 19, if you're wanting to learn about all the new standards coming out, which are coming out fast and furious, and every year we have more and more, they start on page 19. GASB is the standard setting body for local accountants. Or for local governments, rather. And these are the new accounting standards that are coming out. The one notable one that I'll mention that likely will have effects on the city of Roswell is on page 21, related to leases. And this is going to have widespread effect on all local governments that enter into leases. You had operating and capital leases. The difference being is that, you know, you have to kind of a pay-as-you-go basis on rent expense versus booking things as debt and a capital asset of your own in the form of a capital lease. This new standard will require governments to report things as what we call capital leases and that related debt. So that will be a change in the statements, but it's still a few years out. And that concludes my presentation. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Does council have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for your clear presentation. Actually, back to page 17 that you mentioned very lightly, if you can explain a little bit point 1 to 4. Please.
1 through 4 there? Yes, sir. So on number 1, and I believe, yes, these all have to do with the Roswell Economic and Development, the CVB, if you will. But these all have to do with that. They are a component unit of the city of Roswell, and they are included in their financial reporting entity, and we audit them as reporting within there. These were items that we identified while we were auditing their books, if you will. And the first item there has to do with bank reconciliations and a formal review process of those reconciliations. That entity obviously is a smaller entity than the city of Roswell and has less staff, if you will, to, you know, as far as being able to separate duties and what have you. And it's inherent to that size of entity, but what we're recommending, number 1, is to make sure that we have the checks and balances and have those signatures and documented reviews and approvals of cash reconciliations. So that's what number 1 is. Number 2 was where we actually noted some lack of documented approval related to some of the disbursements when we tested some of the disbursements and expenditures related to that entity. Number 3 has to do with capital assets reporting, whether it be furniture and fixtures or equipment or what have you. Excel is great. It does have its inherent limitations when you're calculating depreciation, which is required under accounting principles, that you over-depreciate things, or there's errors in the formulas or what have you. We did have a very small error you see there of $679, which is very small even for that entity. But we just thought, because of the inherent limitations related to Excel, that we should recommend that as an item of, hey, you maybe get a capital asset module or some kind of capital asset depreciation software versus Excel. And then the 4th item there, this is state law. Every government in the state of Georgia is required to collateralize their deposits at 110% of those deposit balances, either through FDIC or pledge collateral. And there was about $6,100 in deposits within that entity that was not either FDIC coverage or collateralized with secured pledge collateral.
Great, thank you. So in terms of the software, do you think QuickBooks will make it, or will be a step above Excel if they use QuickBooks or any other off-the-shelf?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure if QuickBooks has a capital asset module or not. I know there's other capital asset depreciation softwares out there that you can use as on the side, and that doesn't have to be integrated with QuickBooks, for their general ledger accounting.
Additional questions from council? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Yes, sir.
Lee Fleck, 435 North Pond Trail. I was going to say my compliments for last in case I ran out of time, but thank you, Mr. Luckett. You answered a lot of my questions, so I'll be able to start off with my compliments. Okay. First, I like the auditor's discussion and analysis because it is very easy for the average citizen to read and understand. Superb job. Compared to what's been in the past when the print is about that big and it's all jammed together, this is an absolutely fantastic presentation. I also want to acknowledge and compliment the Finance Department for receiving the Certificate of Achievement Award for Financial Reporting. Those are my initial compliments. I want to go into a couple of questions I have of the Consolidated Annual Financial Report. What I found the most disconcerting was on page 18, and we can certainly elaborate on that. It says, during the performance of our audit of the financial statement of the city, we noted that the organization is lacking some elements of a cybersecurity framework or cybersecurity risk management program. A functional cybersecurity risk management program will assist the city in comprehending, identifying security weaknesses, potential threats, and risks and controls used to safeguard information and systems. What the city of Atlanta went through recently should scare the hell out of any municipality. To that end, I just have to say I'm a little concerned that it takes a bunch of pencil pushers to ID security, cybersecurity issues with your systems, which we've been using for years. At any rate, I hope you take their recommendation to address them as quickly as possible. As for the other items on page 17 that were elaborated and discussed with Councilman Zapata, Mayor, in light of the auditing recommendations implementing these recommendations, I hope you might want to advise your CBP or CVP and Roswell Economic Development Bureau relative to the negative images of spending taxpayers' monies without proper approvals and violating state laws, and how that negatively reflects these items that are portrayed, especially in light of the fact that you're all going to come over to East Roswell in the near future and tell us what is in our best interest. I hope that that will be impressed upon them so as not to have these type of abnormalities in the future. I do say also, while I'm here, is that as the auditors referred to in page 14, numerous compliments of your accounting department or finance department. Significant difficulties encountered performing the audits, no difficulties. Disagreements, no disagreements. Completeness and accuracy of various information. Just a lot of attaboys for your finance department. I also want to say that it is a monumental task and probably the most challenging task for any council member to be the liaison to the finance departments and have to be able to drill down into the nuts and bolts of a city's very challenging municipal financial structure. I want to compliment Councilman Zapata for his efforts to control unnecessary spending. You know, when I look and I see that we've already spent $180,000 tonight on various shell entities, we need accountability for these various money laundering machines this council willingly hands my money over to throughout this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fleck. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak? Seeing no hands up, are additional questions, concerns from council? Yes, Councilmember Tizer.
Yeah, first of all, speaking for our entire profession, the last speaker referred to us as pencil pushers. We greatly prefer bean counter. So if that could be corrected, that'd be great. Just one question that I have. The amount of money that we're talking about that was unapproved, didn't have evidence of approval. As you did your research, were those funds properly spent?
We did not see any problems with the being impropriety. It was just, it's a controls item of just having the proper approvals.
Thank you.
Additional questions, comments from council? Thank you very much to our finance department and our auditors. You all did you do a great job every day, so we really do appreciate it, and I feel very confident in our finance department, and thank you for your kind words as well. Next on the agenda is Recreation and Parks Department. Councilmember Tizer.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 7 is the approval of a text amendment to Chapter 9, Historic Preservation, Article 9.1, City-Owned Property, Section 9.1.1, Property Management of City of Roswell, Code of Ordinances regarding the position of the Historic Assets Manager, first reading.
Mr. Davidson.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 9, Historic Preservation, Article 9.1, City-Owned Historic Property, Section 9.1.1, Property Management of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 9, Historic Preservation, Article 9.1, City-Owned Historic Property, Section 9.1.1, Property Management is amended by deleting said section in its entirety and substituting a new Section 9.1.1 to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this would be the first reading.
Mr. Leatherman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item accompanies item number 4 on your consent agenda, where the council approved the movement of the historic asset manager from the admin department into the recreation department. And as part of that move, we're recommending this ordinance change to place the historic assets under the direction and responsibility of my department and my position or my designee, which eventually will be the newly hired historic asset manager.
Does council have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Tyser.
Excuse me. Director Leatherman, in your prior position, I believe you managed a number of historic ranches. 6, was that?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Additional questions, comments from council? Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward? Yes, sir, please do so.
Don Horton, 9885 Robinwood Lane, Roswell. I didn't have a chance to speak on the first thing because it's part of the consent agenda, but I'm really opposed to the change in the ordinance that places the historic assets manager under Parks and Recreation, and I have a number of reasons for that. There have been at least 2 studies, and I'm under the understanding that may have been more, that the city has paid for, which have recommended adding either a separate division or a public-private partnership to manage historic assets and cultural affairs. A separate department and a separate budget so that the historic assets are not competing for maintenance and operational budget with recreation and parks. When I was on council, I learned that Bullock Hall had a significant roof leak for over 2 years and didn't get addressed until I pointed it out that there was dry rot on the fascia board, and it ended up costing the city significantly more than it would have if they had just repaired the leak in the roof. I pointed out similar problems at Smith Plantation, and I'm trying to figure out, was that a budget issue or was it simply a lack of time for careful inspection of the historic homes? As great a job as our recreation and parks do with really over 1,000 acres of parkland, it's my impression that they're spread too thin. The result is inadequate maintenance of grounds, restrooms, and facilities. You can go to any of our parks and look at some of the restrooms, some of the facilities, and they're just not very well maintained. You only have to look at recreational facilities at Johns Creek and East Cobb to see the significant difference in the level of upkeep. If we're going to keep our gold medal winning status, we need to address those maintenance issues. And once again, if we put all of the historic assets under recreation and parks, those are going to be in competition for those same maintenance dollars. Some of our volunteer coaches need training on fundamentals. I'm not sure that they're getting that. It's a great thing to volunteer, there's no question, and we appreciate all our volunteers. But it's quite another thing to be fully qualified. My grandchildren have chosen to go to the East Cobb recreational program for their baseball program because the coaches in the system here, and I've been there with their practices and observed how inadequate the coaching has been. They're not teaching the fundamentals that are necessary for having a strong program. Once again, this is dollars that will be competing for maintenance and other things regarding the historic assets. The basketball program has parents driving all over the city to different venues in order to take part in the basketball program. One week, they might be here on East Roswell Park. Another week, they're going to be over on Roswell Area Park. The next week, they're going to be over in the East Roswell Park. And for families that have both parents working to having to adjust their schedules to meet that change every single week becomes somewhat burdensome. Again, the scheduling is not clearly, has clearly not been very efficient. Finally, I would like to implore the mayor and council to dig out the studies that I mentioned earlier and seriously reconsider a total realignment of the historic assets and cultural affairs as a separate division or public-private partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I did not think I would be speaking this often tonight, or I would have dressed a little better. I am a little ambivalent about having a historic assets manager, but I have to say that we need to do something to raise the profile of our historic assets. I was talking to Mr. Leatherman, who I really respect. I think we won the lottery when he decided he'd come and work and live in Roswell. But we need to do something with our historic assets so that they are coordinated and offer relevant, meaningful experiences to people. And that means we need to hire someone who can create energy and momentum. We know that around the world, and you know that's what I do, visitors are down to historic homes. Nobody wants to look at old furniture anymore. That's why there's a climbing wall or a rock wall on a cruise ship, because people want more active things. So we need to hire someone to come and make our place vital and relevant, not just old buildings. And I love history. I have a degree in it. So if it means moving it to Rec and Parks, because then we can coordinate Rec and Parks events at the historic homes, then I think it's a good idea. I also seem to recall that this position, we didn't have this position, but cultural events and historic used to be in Rec and Parks before we took it out. So maybe that's the reason why Chuck Douglas had to wait years to get the house painted and the roof fixed, because there was nobody that was listening. No one seems to be listening when our houses need help. I don't know, maybe there's nobody to listen. I just know that we're dropping the ball on those historic homes as what's going to bring people to Roswell. And when I meet groups of people, and you know I interact all the time with visitors, I don't know a stranger. And they tell me, wow, we Googled plantation, and they came from Florida to go to Noonan, Georgia for a basketball tournament, and they end up at the Smith plantation. And they're thrilled, young girls, it was a girls' basketball team. They couldn't wait to see it. Now, they didn't have time to go in the house, but they wanted to see the slave house. They thought that was amazing. A lot of these girls were African American. Some were Hispanic. They were all 6 feet tall. They were on a basketball team. I took them around and I give them the free tour, and then I took them to Bullock Hall, and then I took them to Barrington, and then I drove them down to the covered bridge. They followed me in their 2 vans. And they were so excited. And you know what one kid loved the most? The trees, because they lived in downtown Miami. They weren't used to pine trees. They wanted to know if they could take the pine cones home as a souvenir. I said, oh, honey, I'll give you a bag full. Don't just worry about one. So I think that we need someone who is responsible and proactive and has a degree in marketing and PR and loves history to actually make something, because, you know, Alpharetta just is getting ready to open a historical museum. I don't know what they have that's historic, but anyhow, they're going to make a museum. We don't have one. But we have a living museum, and we need to make it more interactive. I've gone to events for Mexico Tourism where I'm given the goggles, and it's in virtual reality, and I'm climbing with the Mayans. Why can't we do that at the Smith? When someone puts those on and sees what daily life is like and encounters someone. You know my ideas about activating this space. I won't bother you with that, but this is part of the historic assets right there, that path. So I would encourage you, if you hire someone, I know Mr. Leatherman will find a good person, to really give them responsibilities and set your goals, because I don't even think any of you know what the goals are of the historic district or the historic assets. You don't know what the goals are. No one's ever discussed that, ever. What are the goals of having an historic district besides having restaurants on Canton Street? Because I know some people think that's the most important part of the historic district, but it is not. When I tell people to go to Groveway and see Pleasant Hill Baptist Church, and I tell them the history of that church and that area, I don't care what color they are fascinated with our history. And just like we're celebrating roots, yeah, the roots run really, really, really deep. In most places, they don't. They're like pine trees, shallow roots that grow tall. Well, here we have deep roots. And I would hope that a historic assets manager would be able to fertilize and let those grow, and we will thrive, because we need to be unique in Metro Atlanta. Everybody else is being swallowed up by boring, homogeneous nothingness. It's everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
My name is Claire Snedeker, 765 Whitehall Way. I just want to add another note. The Historic Assets Manager can catalyze our historic homes, and I ask that this issue really be drilled into so that the city can actually harness the value of our amazing historical assets. And also consider strongly these comments tonight, and also that the homes, however they are catalyzed for the city, that the enjoyment be for all residents, heavily weighted towards no-fee activities. I just think this is an overwhelming opportunity for us. And please give those thoughts and the others tonight consideration. It's just the first reading, so there's time to do more. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak? Seeing no one come forward, Council, do you have any additional questions? Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think it's a great idea, and just to clarify for the record and for people who is watching the meeting tonight, are you planning, Mr. Lehman, to have a different separate fund to manage the revenue and the cost of the historic assets?
Sure. So what this position will do, and the direction that the board in adopting, or the council adopting this position at mid-year, was to essentially create a division within my department that will solely manage the historic assets. And that's an important point right now. At times in our history, it has been split in a management with our pool as well as with our other cultural services. And this position solely focuses in on the historic assets of our community. And that truly drives at how do we incorporate it into our everyday lives on a regular basis. And that is the underlying mission of this position and this person once we hire them. And that's what we're looking for in the recruitment. When it comes to the financing piece, there's two funds associated. A portion of the revenue for programs goes into our Recreation Participation Fund to reinvest back into the facilities for programming. And then we also have a portion of the general fund for the physical assets of the building. So when you look at the funding structure, the general fund pays for the physical improvements of the structures themselves. And then we have a programmatic fund within the Recreation Participation Fund that also reinvests back into the programs. The council also funded a study for all 4 of the homes that reviewed the physical structures themselves and also made a recommendation for a 5-year improvement plan. That will be coming forward to the council in this next fiscal cycle for your consideration on how we improve the various assets across the board. And we'll be presenting that as part of our budget in this next year.
Okay, and my last question is, do you have already like a job description or the qualification that you will be looking into this individual to take this position?
We do, and we do have it, and it is available on our website right now.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Great, thank you, Mayor Henry. This is definitely a topic I consider very important. So I do want to reference some of the resident comments. So for example, Mr. Horton spoke. I disagree with the overall opposition they shared, but I do agree with some of the concerns that I do want to address. So at a committee meeting, I brought up some similar concerns. I can't remember if Mr. Horton, if it's when we were on council together or is when you left to run for mayor. But what I was trying to bring forward, and I felt was we have, I think, just such a phenomenal Rec and Park Commission, and they do such a great job of helping this council really set the direction. And I think, they've proven their incredible expertise around parks, around recreation, fields, et cetera. And I felt it is a different expertise and perhaps at times a different passion for when it comes to our history and the importance of maintaining these homes and creating the success. And so I was a proponent of somewhat having a separate group to help set this separate direction. And even as a suggestion I had for consideration was, it's my understanding that currently Roswell Square, the historic square, is something where any revenue that it creates goes to Rec and Park for overall Rec and Park purposes. And this was something that I felt is really so tied in with our history. I felt that if it's going to generate revenue, I thought a great opportunity to really tie in with our historic homes, and therefore the potential for this historic focused commission to be able to help direct those funds in the way that they felt most effective in strengthening our story, as Ms. Russell brought up. So without a doubt, I do have some concerns. I do want to ensure that our historic homes and really the history in Roswell is getting the appropriate attention. And at the same time, I absolutely do support this ordinance change. And the reason being is this might not be the end point of where we need to go, but I think it's absolutely a step in the right direction. I think one of the challenges we've had in leveraging our great history is, and when I say great history, just in the sense of comparing to much newer towns that don't have historic homes, et cetera, and don't have different resources that we have. What I think is a challenge we've had in the past is really it's been very siloed. So we have a number of different historic homes with, I think historically, have each done an incredible job, but from a siloed standpoint. And I think by creating this position, I think it's going to do a great job in really bringing it together and helping have that vision to hopefully bring Roswell forward as that tourist destination. So again, I support this ordinance tonight, but Mr. Leatherman, I do want to give you a heads up that I will absolutely be watching closely just to make sure that that really within your department it is getting the right attention, right support from your team as well as this council.
Councilmember Judy.
So, not to belabor this point, but as somebody who grew up playing in the park system here in Roswell since I was 4, and now with a kid in the park system, I can say that our facilities are second to none and our people are second to none. Our maintenance staff, being in the sports industry, I travel around the country a lot and see a bunch of different facilities, and we're really lucky here in Roswell. So in Detroit, we won the gold medal a couple years ago. So to entrust our historic homes, which are so important to our city, to our gold medal winning staff, and to our directors, who I know are more than capable to take our homes to the next level, this is a no-brainer for me, and I think this is the right thing to support at this point in time.
Additional comments from council? Well, I would also like to thank staff for the great job that you do. I would like to also thank our city administrator, and I believe that you all are making good decisions, and I will stand behind those, and I applaud you for taking us in a new direction. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve item number 7.
Motion by
Second.
Councilmember Tizer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Zapata. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Transportation Department. Councilmember Grower.
Thank you, Mayor. The next item is item number 8, approval of a pre-approval agreement for use of impact fees in excess of the $333,175 impact fee credit for the residential portion of the Roswell Exchange property for the Sun Valley Phase 3 system improvements in the amount of $638,519.36. Right-of-way acquisition from the adjacent properties for these system improvements from the Transportation Impact Fee Fund and Budget Amendment BA 2304-2101-01-28-19 in the amount of $638,519.50. Mr. Asenbrack.
Thank you, Councilmember Grower.
That was a mouthful.
It was. Mayor, members of the City Council, good evening. The Pollock Shores Real Estate Group has requested the use of impact fee credits and reimbursements of excess costs to construct the street system improvements on Sound Valley Drive. I'm going to turn the technical presentation of this over to our engineering and design manager, Mr. Rob Del Ross.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Impact fees are a difficult little topic to discuss. This item is complicated. I'll do my best to try and explain and answer any questions you may have. This request is from the developer. This request is taking the impact fees that his residential portion of his property, which is $333,175, to subtract that from the system improvements that he is proposing to construct. The difference of those two numbers is the 638,519.50 number you have in your item. Couple of important elements related to this request. This is a request from the developer that staff is moving forward. This request is several years after the initial development was proposed and approved by this body. The reason for that is by state law and by our ordinance. These impact fee requests are brought forward when building permits are filed. The building permits have been filed for the residential portion of this development. The commercial portion of this element has not yet been filed, and that's why you see the $333,000 number. One other element, and then I'll sit down and answer any questions you have. This project, as we call Sun Valley Phase 3, has not been designed yet. If you refer to your packets in page 73, you'll see a slightly different version of the project than what I have displayed on the screen. Purpose behind that is to show you that this is still a concept. This project has not been designed. It has not been funded for engineering. It has not been funded for right-of-way acquisition or construction. All staff is doing is preserving this corridor, and we are asking to take $638,000 from impact fees and other projects to this developer for him to construct the portion. I am now showing you on the screen. The colors don't appear very well on the screen, but they probably appear pretty well on your monitors. The red line is the property line of the developer, and the shaded orange area are primarily the areas where the system improvements are being proposed, primarily on the opposite side of Sun Valley, as well as the approaches to the roundabout connecting the adjacent parcels. The roundabout itself is not a system improvement. The roundabout was a condition approved by you and ultimately chosen by the developer. Here to answer any questions you may have.
Does council have any questions? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have a number of questions. So first of all, Mr. Davidson, are we, the city, required to accept the developer's request?
No, it's in the sole discretion of this body.
Okay. And then, I don't know if this is a question for Mr. Davidson or transportation, but even that $333,000, is that something that needs to go towards this project, or would we have the ability to use that towards other impact fees? And I want to give a clarification before you answer that question. I'm fully aware and want to make sure everybody's fully aware that in regards to transportation impact fees, they cannot just be used on any project. There's certain criteria that says either whether they could or could not. So I'm aware. So I guess basically my question is that 333, does that need to be used right here? Or could we decide that 333 is used on a different project in the city as long as it met the criteria?
I can answer that one. Back at page 65. It's a pretty good answer to your question. Looking at the background section, this is actually the letter from the applicant to our city administrator. If you look in the background section, paragraph 3 defines what is a system improvement and how projects like this are eligible for impact fees. It must be in the CIE, it must be designated as a system improvement, it must be in our plans.
Right, and so I completely understand that this is an eligible request, but the way I'm reading this as well, we're not required to use it here. We would just be required to use it somewhere that fits that eligibility?
If this request tonight were not approved, this doesn't remove the developer from still being required to pay the $33175 in impact fees that could go to any eligible project as you deem.
Exactly. Thank you for completely answering that question. So here's my position on this matter. So as the request currently stands, I'm opposed to this, and here's why. First of all, I don't want anyone to think that my opposition to this request is in any way a signal of staff here, because in reality what's occurred here is the developer made a request. I completely understand why they would make that request. If I was a developer, I'd probably make the same exact request. Staff received that request. Staff is presenting to that council, which is their duty. So I fully appreciate what you're doing and completely understand. So basically what's being requested here is that we take $333,000 of approximately of impact fees that the developer has to pay either way, and the city can decide how and where they want to use them as long as it fits the eligibility and fits all the criteria. And then in addition to directing that $333,000 with the criteria, is having the city pay over $630,000. So that totals almost $1 million. And so really, as I look at it, $1 million of city money, knowing that 330 has requirements and how it's used, almost $1 million of city money. Is this the priority right here, this roundabout that, although it shows a potential add-on in the future, right now in current day, what we're discussing is it just being a roundabout right there? Is that the best expenditure of the $1 million? And my answer is, for me personally, the answer is no. I would support this if the math was a little different. And what I mean by that is I absolutely understand the value I see the developer getting out of this request. I feel that without a doubt, it's going to help the marketability, I'm sure, of their location, curb appeal, et cetera. So they're of course be getting in my mind, be getting a great deal with this $1 million spent. If the developer wanted to pay towards it, and I mean more than just pay towards the required $333,000 that they pay either way, if they wanted to contribute something towards it, I'd actually be very supportive of it, because then I would see our residents getting a better bang for the buck. But as they've requested it, I will not support that. But again, I would certainly support it if their request was adjusted. But those are my views.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Councilmember Judy.
From a transportation department, with this project here, do you recommend this $333,000 be spent here versus any other impact fees elsewhere?
Ultimately, from a staff perspective, we do recommend approving this. The biggest reason why is because if we ever intend on building these system improvements as shown, it is much less expensive utilizing a mobilized contractor in today's dollars than whatever future inflated costs that might be.
So basically you're saying planning for the future here with a usable right now product.
That's correct. One other element I'm going to highlight, another reason why we recommend approval. We have a mobilized contractor ready to build Sun Valley 3. One of the sources of funding towards the $638,000 that we're asking to reprogram in the budget amendment is from a project that is not shovel ready. It is a very badly needed intersection improvement, but it's a question of a project that is shovel ready, that is ready to be turned dirt right now versus a project that is not quite ready.
I'd like to add just a little bit to that. We are building for the future. From a transportation perspective, this is a trifecta, okay? It improves connectivity, it improves mobility and safety, and improves economic development. Very rarely do we get all three of those and a willing developer, and we're not cutting through anybody's subdivision. So there's really no downside to this project. With all due respect to Councilor Palermo, I certainly understand that theoretically we could spend this money anywhere. The shovel-ready aspect of it and the fact that we're going to bring this benefit, this multiple benefits to the city faster than anything else we have on the books right now is very appealing to us. At end state, we're going to have a really nice development. We're going to have much better connectivity. We're going to improve the mobility of the Mansell, 9, weave, and merge. So we're going to take all that safety issues out. We're going to take back about a half a mile of state route to become under Roswell's control, more of a residential setting. And the benefit to the overall network is significant, and we are very supportive of this project.
Additional questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Grower.
These systems, I'm still struggling a little bit with understanding what the benefit to the city of these system improvements is. I think when we talked about this in committee, the improvements also would allow heavier vehicles to travel on that road. Is that correct? Can you just list out the things that the city would get if we spent this in terms of benefits in a little bit more detail?
The system improvements, the easiest way for me to describe them, system improvements, and I can show you the conditions that you approved from 2 years if you'd like. They're in your packet. System improvements go above and beyond what you require from the development as project improvements. So if we look at the frontage and improvements on the opposite side of Sun Valley, if we look at those two approaches for the roundabout, along with the bike lanes and pedestrian improvements along the frontage of the car dealership, that is not a project improvement that's eligible for system improvements. In addition to that, we envision at a future date, speaking with the state DOT about realigning State Route 140 on this new project, and we have asked the developer to construct a thicker section than we would normally do for a collector to allow that conversation to happen when we approach the state DOT. So it's primarily asphalt and concrete and traffic control.
So when we talked about this in committee, I was excited about the possibility that could become a state route and be more beneficial for just connectivity and traffic. Is it not a conversation that we could have with the DOT prior to us approving this money? Because if they say there's absolutely no way we want 140 to go that way, then we just spent $1 million on something that.
So we have had prior conversations with the DOT about this, and they're very open to the whole concept. So them having a half a mile less of state route to maintain is very appealing to them. So State Route 9 and State Route 140 will just lay on top of each other until they get to State Route 9, as opposed to going over and splitting off. So there's everything to be gained by this from the state to do this. Now they will not. Then the flip side would be if the council decides not to approve this. It doesn't mean that that is dead forever. What it means is we probably won't get the roundabout, and we'll get just a plain vanilla turn lanes, and which will be a harm to the developer. But he'll get over it. If the city council ever in the future wanted to revisit this, then we'll have to dig up that road and reconstruct it with this thicker cross section. So there's definitely a cost avoidance here in doing it, and it's a forever thing if we do it now and partnering with the developer. If we choose to do it later, we certainly can. It's just going to cost us a lot more.
And just one more question. Is there any risk in terms of timing of this project if we defer this tonight to get more information? I'd like to get more comfortable about GDOT's thoughts on this before we approve something of this magnitude.
Clyde will correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is the developer has been speaking with staff for at least 3 months wanting to push this through. I do not know whether it's an urgent must approve tonight issue for them, and they're actually not here to speak for themselves. I know it is time sensitive, but I do not believe it's urgent.
I wouldn't correct that. That's true. They are ready to go to construction. They're ready to build. It's not only shovel ready, it's trucks on the ground type ready. So this is a project that's the city has talked about for some time. It is a really good connection throughout the community. They have spent and intend to spend $243,000 $864.19, as it says in your packet. So it's not like they didn't put money in it. That's not part of their money. They're going to spend this money anyway, and that's part of your impact fee. The planning jargon is it has to have a rational nexus to the project. I mean, this whole city is a service area. Yes, you could put it any place in the city, but the project has to go for a rational nexus to their project for their impact fee to be eligible for them to use it.
One additional point that Community Development Director Alice Wakefield just pointed out to me, this is potentially holding up the building permit for the development.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So, well, first I want to point out that this letter asking for $1 million is dated November 30, 2018, which is 18 months after this project had been approved. So, so this is also, you know, touching about the urgency. It's only 2 months old, this letter, asking, requesting, and also, you know, bring me to even a bigger point. Like, was this disclosed 18 months ago that the city will need to come out with $1 million for improvement of the road? Was this brought up 18 months ago, or is something that just was brought up on November 30, 2018 through the official letter?
Per state law, the applicant requests impact fee credits when building permits are filed. The development was approved 2 years ago. Building permits were not advanced until late 2018.
But was this part of the master plan, or is something that came out of the blue? Oh, might as well, let's do this. Let's put $1 million here, let's do it. Or is something that was thought carefully from day one on this project?
The Sun Valley Phase 3 concept was envisioned before the applicant ever came in to develop, but there was never a discussion on dollars and what this would actually cost until November and the letter was sent to the city.
Okay. So my second point, and following the comment from Councilmember Grower, do we have a MOU from GDOT that they will be, you know, excited with this, and they will, do we have a MOU, something official beside a word or a telephone conversation?
We do not have a formal agreement. To echo what my director just stated, we have had discussions with local GDOT staff. We've had discussions with the district engineer at District 7. She immediately understood the benefit to their network with a project like this. We do not have an official agreement. We have not brought this to the level of the chief engineer commissioner, but we have had initial discussions and they've gone very well.
Okay, thank you. And my last point will be, what about if Sun Valley Phase 3 is never built? This means we'll be having buried there $1 million treasure on the road.
This body has approved money for the acquisition of a house, which we have purchased and are in the process of demolishing in order to preserve the corridor. In this current budget year, you have approved $200,000 for us to do the concept development. So that is our guidance from you to pursue this. The developer has, as Rob mentioned, we predate the developer. Now, whether he already had looked at that site or whether he saw Sun Valley Phase 3 as a really nice little nugget that he would like to take advantage of, in other words, instead of being on one street, he was going to be on a through street on two sides. We don't know that, but it has been the direction of this council to the transportation staff to move forward with this project, and that's what we've been doing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, projects change with time. We have the experience with the Big Creek Parkway. So I understand have been approved, but, you know, things change. And we know that, and we have proof of that. So, you know, So I don't know. I think that, the city I'm sure you have on file many projects that will benefit a lot of residents and taxpayers, other than people today buying or renting, better say, renting those apartments. So I don't think it's fair for the taxpayers to bury $1 million there when we have actually, phase 2, we're taking, I understand, money from phase 2 to jump into phase 3. So, I will rather keep, the money in phase 2 and focus on developing phase 2 and as soon as possible, rather than take money from here to put in there and then eventually get it somewhere to put it back. I mean, that is, I don't know. I don't see clear needs of this. And the urgency, I don't see the urgency neither. Especially if this project, for whatever reason, even, community opposition, doesn't move forward, Sun Valley Phase 3, then we will have a beautiful treasure of $1 million buried on the street. And I don't think that that is fair for the taxpayer of Roswell.
I'd like to just address that just briefly, and that is the if the council did approve this and it did not get built, then that improvement that would be buried in the street would be available for a future council to piggyback off to without having to dig up the street to pay more money to put it in a position where it could be done. So if you choose to do it now, it's available. If you choose to do it later, it's still available. It's not going to go anywhere. There's really no shelf life. There's no deterioration. It would be putting money in the future for doing that connection.
Yes.
Steve or Rob, what would be the difference between the cost if we do it now with saving on mobilization versus doing it in the future?
It's really difficult to answer that question. I wish I had a number. Ultimately, it depends on how long that future is. Obviously, it's a much different argument if we're talking a year or two versus 5 years or 10 years.
Ballpark it.
Mobilization costs are typically 20%. Just so.
Yeah, 20% of $1 million is $200,000 right off the top there that we would be paying for a new contractor to come onto the site versus a established contractor that is right next door.
So what you're saying is the plan's not going to change based on this development?
Correct.
Okay, so.
The alignment, I mean, is pretty much set.
And this is an eligible expense for impact fees?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions from council. Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, I'd just like to get an idea, I guess best case or kind of as you see in the short to long term plan, where do you see this as falling in your priorities and planning process?
We're preparing in the middle of budget prep right now. We just had a meeting this afternoon looking at our capital list and what we're going to be proposing to you over the next month. This is a very high priority. This project is near the top of our list, looking forward to future years for design and ultimately construction.
We just did. So in your world, this is a short-term project priority. So
yes,
so
very
laying the
high
foundation
for the
right now
department
would make sense.
If it wasn't for the partnership that you had with Cobb County on Willio Bridge,
right,
this would be my #1 priority.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Palermo.
So I actually want to go back to something Mr. Asenbrack said earlier, which was you brought up your guess was that perhaps if this council did not approve this, then they would probably just build some turn lanes, which would probably be a detriment to the developer. That was a guess. I'm not, who knows, but I mean, I think that's where I want to point out that even if we don't approve their request and instead really negotiate and provide something a little more reasonable, then I think it's something they could still see as a benefit because basically that $333,000 they're spending either way, even if it has to go somewhere else, and again, requesting some free money from the city. For me, just because a developer requests something, I don't automatically just go ahead and approve it. I want to really look at it, and frankly, they're going to get benefit from this. I don't see why we just automatically approve it. Why don't we give a proposal that's still beneficial to the developer, but also a little more beneficial to the taxpayer? So I will support a deferral. I will support really a counter proposal where we still pay something and give them the credit, but not this full amount. And I would support a denial, but I certainly will be opposing automatically everything that they've requested.
I'd like to ask Mr. Davidson to opine on the conditions as part of the project, particularly condition number 6.
Yes, when the project was approved, condition number 6 reads, the owner-developer must consider analyzing and constructing a roundabout at Sun Valley Drive driveway approximately 600 feet west of State Route 9. Constructing this roundabout will require approximately 9,000 square feet of right-of-way dedication to the city. If the owner-developer chooses to build this roundabout, the design must follow NCHRP report number 672 and must be constructed before issuance of the first certificates of occupancy. If a roundabout is built, the median along Sun Valley Drive between this roundabout and State Route 9 must be maintained, and the other 2 side driveways on Sun Valley Drive must be right in, right out with decel lanes. If the owner-developer chooses not to construct this roundabout, the median along Sun Valley Drive must still be maintained. First driveway west of State Route 9 must be right in, right out with a decel lane. Second driveway west of State Route 9 must have a decel lane and a westbound left turn lane with a median gap. Third driveway west of State Route 9 must have a decel lane and a westbound left turn lane. The owner-developer must dedicate the necessary right-of-way associated with this option to the city. Basically what the city was doing at the time. We already had this concept, as your transportation department has said. It's part of the capital improvement project. We cannot extract things from a developer because we have an impact fee ordinance. We are able to get the impact fees in lieu of doing extractions. So the fact that we put this in as a condition on this developer, not so much the roundabout, but the construction and the dedication of the right-of-way, I think it is not incumbent on this council, but I think it deserves good consideration by this council of what you're going to use the money for if you don't use it for this.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Actually, the irony I just want to point out is actually my points. My points are actually my main concern is not the $33,000 impact fee. My concern is the larger amount, that $638,000. So again, I think that's where I completely understand the developer requesting the extra money towards it. But again, it's not something I can support that full amount.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Additional questions, comments from council? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to this topic? Yes, ma'am, please come forward.
My name is Claire Snedeker, 765 Whitehall Way. From the discussion tonight, it just confirms what I came here to say. The city deciding to spend $1 million at this point is excessive in my mind, as well as premature for so many reasons, and we've heard a lot of them tonight. Especially since this is only the residential multifamily portion of this development and lacks the commercial phase 2 at this point. This project, the $1 million, does not itself improve the flow-through of traffic benefiting Mansell. What I wanted to do was to just show this diagram. One of the hardest things is that the exhibits in this package do not actually define the area of the improvements. Instead, it shows the full area of Sun Valley 3. And what I tried to do there in dark blue is to list the area that the improvements relate to. And I actually was guessing because the exhibit has the whole Sun Valley 3. But what you'll see is the part that's not in the blue there on the lower right is the part that has to do with Howes Road and the state's flow-through plan. That project has not even been, there's no consensus on that. There's $200,000 in the budget for this year to do studies, traffic, community impact, environmental impact, needs assessment for that extension. If that extension study is done at that time, it might be appropriate to spend $1 million, but it's premature to say that at this point. Also, what I heard is that the DOT is very open to this, but then I heard the chief engineer has not yet been involved. Those leave quite a bit of due diligence open in my mind. The developer is not here. And I feel like a lot of this project is not only premature, but the lack of definition in the documents for tonight's package leaves it open to where the actual money is being spent. A big concern is that it not be spent in a project creep down a project, the extension of Sun Valley 3 that is not yet approved and for which there is no consensus. So the other things are that house that's sitting there that the city bought is in such a state that if I had it in my neighborhood, I would have been fined excessively for such a house. The money needs to be spent on demolishing that house instead of having it be a blight and a neglected, abandoned property that the city owns. So that would be a priority. Spending $1 million prematurely would not be. And I also, another larger consideration that I'd like to ask is it seems like there are no fiscal impact studies being done when developments are proposed by a developer. And that's why things like this come up and appear to be a surprise. Developer impact studies, the fiscal impact study of a development, the tax-based benefit, and the cost of the city would seem to be an appropriate tool, and I'd ask for strong consideration of fiscal impact studies being added to the system for developer applications. So I'd ask for tonight not to make a premature decision on $1 million for the taxpayers' benefit, is to actually wait for the due diligence to come in and then either defer or deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a staff member here tonight that can help me with the schedule on the demolition of that house? I know that there were some things that were going on with the fire department or police department. They were using it, and the folks that owned it were storing their belongings in it. Have we gotten that cleared out? Do we have a schedule?
We're processing the requisition for the demolition of the house as we speak today. It has been delayed because of asbestos found in the house, and the asbestos had to be removed. Asbestos requires a E-Verify form that guess who has to sign off on? The federal government. So some things were a little delayed. But the house is ready to be demolished, and the contract has been awarded, and it's about $21,000 to remove that, not $1 million. Couple of items I'd like to correct. The donation of the property is an eligible impact fee item. Its value is about $1.9 million, which is also eligible. Add that to the $243,000 that they're going to spend, and it's about $2.5 million of their donation to the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Yes, ma'am.
I can help you search.
Yes, Karen Smith. I live on Embry Springs Drive. Mr. Assenbrink, I have yet to determine what the flow of traffic is going to be coming through Sun Valley and out onto Howes Road. No, I'm asking you.
Well, if you would direct your questions to this body, and then we'll have them answered.
Maybe somebody up there can help me understand it, because I've yet to see what this is going to do for anybody. Bringing in all the housing that's going up on Alpharetta Highway, the corner of House Way and House Road. All the building that's going up there, all the people that are coming in, everybody's bringing in at least 2 cars. Where is all this traffic going to go? And how is this going to affect House Road, Hembry Springs Drive, Whitehall, all of us, Alpharetta Highway? Somebody needs to help me understand it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can have a seat, and then.
Thank you, Lori.
Yes,
Lori.
we'll discuss it. What I don't want to get in tonight, this is a conversation about impact fees for this roundabout. However, if you'd like to say something, Mr. Asenbrack, I would welcome that.
We anticipated this to come up in conversation tonight. So here is a graphic, an aerial, and it shows State Route 9, and here is Sun Valley. And here is our recently completed and award-winning Sun Valley Phase 1, here. And Sun Valley Phase 1 was connectivity with a roundabout, which improved the same trifecta. It improved connectivity, the roundabout improved local mobility adjacent to it, and it also improved economic vitality of the area. So you have State Route 9 now, which currently, if you want to go on Howes Road, State Route 140. So between Mansell Road and Holcomb Bridge Road, State Route 9 and State Route 140, and even State Route 120 are all layered on top of each other. State Route 140 is Howes Road, and it splits off at Mansell. So the trucks and the cars have to take a left at Mansell and then go north on Howes Road. At the same time, other cars are heading east and west. So this is a safety problem with a documented safety history. If we were to take Sun Valley Phase 3 and move it over to Howes Road, then all the trucks and the cars would come up here and make a left, and this road would come back. You can see here between Hembry Road and Howes Way, there's a large swath of land where there's no connectivity. So the Sun Valley Phase 3 sort of bisects that and allows for that natural connectivity to occur. So there's great benefits to our network to make this connection, and we have this developer here who has requested these impact fees, and that's what we're here tonight to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Asenbrack. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak? Well, I will bring this back to council. Any additional comments from council? Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
My final comment is just, again, we're not here just to discuss the impact fees. We're here to discuss the additional costs as well, which the developer is asking us for us to take them all on.
Thank you. Additional comments? Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I think I'd like to make a motion to defer this to the next council meeting. I think it'd be good to have a conversation with the chief engineer of GDOT to see what their opinion is on this and whether this is a project that's exciting for them. That's the motion.
We've got a motion by Councilmember Grower for deferral. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Back to you, Councilmember Grover.
Thank you, Mayor. This is item number 9, approval of a resolution to restart the Big Creek Parkway project. And I'll read the resolution.
Please.
This is the resolution of the City of Roswell regarding the Big Creek Parkway project. Whereas from 2006 through 2012, the City of Roswell, through various studies, a transportation master plan, and the North Fulton Comprehensive Transportation Plan, determined the need for Big Creek Parkway. And whereas in 2016, voters approved T-SPLOS, which contained as a Tier 1 project design and construction of Big Creek Parkway. And whereas on November 13, 2018, the mayor and council of the City of Roswell paused the Big Creek Parkway project to explore the compatibility of this project with other major transportation and transit initiatives in the area. And whereas Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell have met with appropriate officials and have concluded that the Big Creek Parkway project integrates well with the future plans for managed lanes and bus rapid transit in the Georgia 400 interchange. And whereas the Mayor and the Council of the City of Roswell have determined that the Big Creek Parkway is an integral part of the future Roswell transportation network and will provide significant traffic relief in the area of Holcomb Bridge, Georgia 400 interchange. And whereas Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell look forward to continued collaboration with GDOT, MARTA, and other agencies to ensure that further transportation and transit improvements in the area are beneficial to the citizens of Roswell. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell hereby resolve that the Big Creek Parkway project shall immediately restart, and that the Mayor is authorized to cooperate with GDOT and MARTA to achieve the most economically advantageous transportation and transit improvements for the Big Creek Parkway / Holcomb Bridge Road / Georgia 400 interchange area. The above resolution was read and approved this 28th day of January 2019.
Thank you, Councilmember Grower. Does Council have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
So I 100% support the making it clear that we're absolutely moving forward the Big Creek Parkway, and absolutely that's moving forward. My concern that I want to discuss is regarding one sentence, which if I understand correctly, the intent, I'm concerned this might cause some confusion. That if we go into the fourth whereas, it says Big Creek Parkway project integrates well with the future plans for managed lanes, et cetera. It's my understanding, or I guess the way I read it, it makes it sound like, is this implying that that automatically Big Creek Parkway project is the exact right location for that integration? I guess that's where my single concern is.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Additional comments from council? Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So, yeah, I'm glad that this resolution is brought forward here, and as one of the results of that we stopped this project for a while, came out like a better project came out of that. A project that was, and I appreciate our Department of Transportation open mind on this project, because they came with even a better solution for this, cheaper, won't go over the wetland, and probably we have a faster, they will finish faster the project. So see, that is an example that, when we bounce around ideas and we are open-minded, we come with better projects. So this one is a perfect example of improving an already existing project. So I support this resolution, and I, congratulate the Transportation Department for coming with even a better option for this project.
Thank you, Councilmember Zapata. Councilmember Grower.
I just want to go on record as saying that the collaboration and cooperation between the DOT of Roswell and Georgia Department of Transportation on figuring out all of this stuff and getting as much information as we possibly can has been fantastic. I think the future of the Big Creek Parkway and really the Holcomb Bridge and 400 interchange is bright with the potentials of managed lanes and all that. So we're excited to get this project back underway and continue to make progress in that area, which is an area where a lot of people have a lot of concerns with traffic.
Thank you, Councilmember Grower. Councilmember Palermo, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have a recommendation on how you would like to see that wording changed in the fourth whereas?
Well, so actually, I was just collaborating a little with Councilmember Wilsey, and I think an example potentially could be integrates well with any future plans, and just adding somewhere in that sentence specifically in quote in Roswell. And it's just because what I wouldn't want is this sent down to GDOT and it sounding, or the public thinking that we're saying that that's the exact location for the right integration, when instead we're just saying that if we look at overall Roswell, it integrates well with any. Does that make sense? If somebody can help kind of ad lib with my intention.
So if I understand you correctly, what you'd like the way you'd like that to read is, whereas Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell have met with appropriate officials and have concluded that the Big Creek Parkway project integrates well with the future plans for Roswell.
So no, actually, so integrates well with any future, any future plans in Roswell for. And I'm open to other suggestions. That's just an example of something that I think would relieve my concern.
Mr. Davidson, would you mind reading that back to us, just to make sure we're
This section would read, whereas Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell have met with appropriate officials and have concluded that the Big Creek Parkway project integrates well with any future plans in Roswell for managed lanes and bus rapid transit and the Georgia 400 interchange.
Was that your intention, Councilmember Palermo?
That would accomplish my intention.
And Councilmember Wilsey? Does anybody have any questions about that proposed change? Anybody have any problems with it? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak about this? Okay, I'll bring it back to council. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the resolution with the requested changes by Councilmember Palermo.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Grower. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Palermo. All those in favor, please raise your hands, and it passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. The next item on the agenda is the City Administrator's Report. Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 10, approval for the mayor and or city administrator to sign a contract for professional services with Planning Next, the engagement phase of the upcoming City of Roswell 5-year strategic plan in an amount not to exceed $128,850. In your package, you should have received all the backup material for this initiative. We published, back in November, we published an RFQ, a request for qualifications, for qualified firms to respond to the city with a benchmark engagement proposal. Our charge to them was to come back with us and provide a top-notch benchmark engagement plan. We recommended respondents have expertise in facilitation, marketing, communication, and also data analysis, or to assemble a group of teams or a group of firms into one team with those skills. We received 12 complete proposals from qualified firms, narrowed the list down to 3 candidate firms, and interviewed each of those 3 firms in person at City Hall. The competition was close with all 3 of these firms and with these finalists, and any one of them were qualified to run this project. We were fortunate in that regard. The selection team unanimously chose Planning Next as the most qualified candidate for this specific project. And the scope of work includes developing an engagement, communications, and marketing plan with the following elements: a large city summit, which is a huge kickoff engagement event for the city for this project, engagement activities around the city over the course of the couple months that will be running this project. This includes kiosks at tables at our festivals, events at HOA facilities, pop-up meetings, targeted stakeholder events, basically events where the people are, churches, schools, activity centers. We'll deploy strategic pop-up meetings all around the city. Throughout this time, we'll deploy innovative engagement methods such as a think tank kiosk, meetings in a box where people can host their own meetings under a certain format. We'll have an interactive website dedicated for this project for distributing information and interactive activities for engagement. And we'll also deploy methods to engage those underrepresented communities that we have. We plan on using multilingual capabilities as much as possible. So Planning Next provided this benchmark engagement program or engagement initiatives for which we asked in the most comprehensive and innovative manner. Out of all the respondents, and thus the selection team recommends the City Council authorize the City Administrator and City Attorney begin contract negotiations with Planning Next to complete the engagement phase of our strategic plan in an amount not to exceed $128,850 and execute said contract. And I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Does council have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Palmer. So my question is just specifically that in this engagement for the approximately $129,000, the pure focus, the pure service provided will be just the citywide strategic plan, and that's not to belittle. I know there's many different facets, including many that you mentioned. But I just want to verify there's no other consulting projects or anything that this group is going to do except for this very big initiative. Is that correct?
That's correct. This group is for the engagement phase of the strategic plan only.
Additional questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mr. Palmer, can you give us like a highlights of the background of Planning Next, please? Do you have like a highlights?
Well, it's in your packet, so you can read
it. Not for me to read. Sorry, let me rephrase the question. In order for the record and for the people of Roswell, could you please give us a highlights of the background of Planning Next, please?
What I have is that they've completed several benchmark engagement projects throughout the nation. Communities larger than ours, very impressive resume, very impressive credentials, and it's about all I can give you other than what's in the packets.
Thank you.
Additional questions from council? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am, please come forward.
Thank you. Just a quick clarification on the duties of this Planning Next. When they create engagement events and they get public input, will they, how do I put this tactfully, will they filter out what you don't want to hear so that preconceived ideas are enabled through Planning Next? Will people who say things that maybe people don't want to hear, will they be shut down and put out of a place because of that? Will they be told they're no longer welcome at these planning events if they don't like what they're hearing? And who will control what Planning Next finally filters down and comes to the city? Because we spend a lot of money on plans, and what we end up with aren't the same, and it's because there's a filter somewhere, and what we start with isn't what we end up with, because some people don't like what they hear. So that's my question. Is there going to be a control on what gets filtered out and what ends up happening from all these fantastically sounding engagements? But we don't allow public input or comments at work sessions right now. In City Council, we don't allow comments unless the presiding officer allows them. So we're going to spend $128,000 on public engagement, but when the public wants to engage at a city work session, if the person in charge doesn't want to hear it, they don't allow it or they try to remove them. And that is my question.
I would like to clarify something. City council meetings and work sessions, public comment is taken. I preside over both of those meetings. I think what you might be referring to are committee meetings, and that's a different topic of conversation. However, Mr. Palmer, can you tell me, of course, ultimately this body will have to vote on the strategic plan. But in the process of getting that information to us, I feel certain, but you correct me if I'm wrong, that this is what these folks do. They listen to people, they take all of that information, put it together, and give it to the elected officials.
That's correct, Mayor. I mean, quite the contrary. We're going to collect and memorialize every comment that we have, and if you read the proposal, they talk about that in the proposal. So we're not going to filter anything. We are going to be trying to engage every single person in this community as thorough as possible because we want that feedback. And as you said, the priorities have to be determined by the council based on this engagement phase. So we're not going to filter anything.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward? Bringing this back to council. Additional comments, questions?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Judy.
Second.
Second.
Oh.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey and Tizer. I was looking at her. So. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to this. I think this is going to be a great thing for our city, also a great thing for this council, because it definitely sets priorities as we move forward. And it is our job to set policy, and this gives us a very efficient way of doing that. So thank you all very much, and I can't wait to get started on it. Next item on the agenda is the City Attorney's Report.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on my agenda is approval of an ordinance to amend Chapter 3, Alcoholic Beverages of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. And with your approval, I'll read the ordinance.
Please.
Thank you. An ordinance to amend Chapter 3 Alcoholic Beverages of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 3 Alcoholic Beverages, Article 3.2, Licensing, Section 3.2.10, Eligibility of License, should be licensee. I think I left out an E, sorry. Subsection C of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia is hereby amended by deleting subsection C in its entirety and substituting therefore a new subsection C to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this would be the first reading.
Mr. Davidson, could you just give us the highlights on what we're doing here, please?
I can. Currently, our ordinance requires alcohol licensee in the city to be a lawful resident of the United States or an alien who has been lawfully admitted for permanent residence for at least 1 year prior to the application. The state does not require the lawfully admitted for permanent residence part of the code, so we are changing ours to be more in line with the state, and it will actually read that any such alien shall have been lawfully admitted for at least 1 year prior to the application. And that would be the change to this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Does council have any questions? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? I'll bring it back to council. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the first reading by Councilmember Judy, second by Councilmember Grower. All those in favor, please raise your hands, and it passes unanimously.
The only other item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel litigation and real estate.
Do we have a motion?
Motion for closure.
Motion by Councilmember Grower. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey and Tizer. All those in favor, please raise your hands. It passes unanimously, and we are adjourned.